Now, let's talk about Spellbook. You've probably used our curated data in the Dune app. That's stuff like dex.trades, ave.lending, labels.addresses. Those are all Spellbook tables, right? So Spellbook is our public kind of community-built DBT platform. If you don't know what DBT is a way of managing kind of consecutive execution of tables or queries for creating different lineages. All right, and these lineages show up as DAGs. So this is an example one where there's like this orders table, and it uses this customer order history and then uses order payments, and those tables are created from whatever STG orders, et cetera, is. And so this is a lineage per se, right? And if you want to better understand how we manage our lineages and macros and models inside of Spellbook, I highly recommend you go to Spellbook and you go to Docs, and then you can click into, for example, macros, and it's going to explain to you exactly what we use macros for in Spellbook. All right, that might be a bunch of mumbo jumbo to you, but essentially you can think of it as I have the Uniswap decoded tables. I want to change them into dex.trades, so I need to kind of put it into this lineage where I first transform the Uniswap table, and then I join on prices and everything, and ultimately transform it into dex.trades. And I want to be able to add on all of these other dexes in a way that's like, you know, very incremental, and people can work together to add this data in. Think of it as we're managing a bunch of giant queries in here, right? Right, so what do I mean by that concretely? So for example, if I go to Frederick, our founder's DEX dashboard here, and you click into here, any of these queries, you'll see dex.trades, right? So if I go to Spellbook, and then I go to sub-projects, and I normally like to just search, for example, dex.trades. This is the actual table that I believe is being used to generate dex.trades. And you'll see there's a bunch of kind of subtables being included here. There's curve, there's like dex base trades. So then I might go to base trades and I see, oh, there's Say, Blast, Mantle, Linea, obviously Ethereum, Phantom trades. And then I might be able to go up here to the specific folders, which then have the platforms, and I'm able to find, I'm sure Uniswap v2 is somewhere in here. And then I see there's like this Uniswap v2 kind of like compatible trades. I know it's a macro. Again, it takes some getting used to because it's in Jinja, which is like this scripting language on top of SQL that allows you to do kind of functions like this. So again, it takes a little bit of getting used to if you're only familiar with SQL, but you can quickly start to learn how to read lineages. For example, like I didn't really cover this, but I knew this was a lineage because I see ref. Ref means referencing a different model. And I know I can just search these models by name, like we've named all the files here. So I know this is how I get to Avalanche, and like I can search this and get straight to Uniswap v3. I can go and search this macro. I know that macros have a little bit of a more complex working here, but macro Uniswap v3, again, a macro is a function. So you can see I can now use this, and it's just a combination of different queries as a lineage. Like you can think of it as like a tree, right? Like a DBT lineage tree. Like what is data lineage? It's probably a good. I'm sure they have a good example here. Yeah, like you see that they have these tables, like you have an orders table that's made of like these other subtables. Like that's how you think about this lineage. So if you want to be able to navigate it, you can just click into, not models, you can click into DBT subprojects, and there's a bunch of different projects here for you to kind of dig into. My preference is usually if you know the table name, like let's say I know it's dex.trades, I'm just going to search dex.trades here to be able to find the data. Again, you want to look basically within DBT subprojects not these other tables, right? So I'll look in dex.trades, and this is Binance, and I can see a bunch of their, air swap, for example. There's some SQL code here, uses something as Jinja as well. So then there's like, oh, air swap compatible trades. Well, let me go and search that here. And you can see that I can just find my way into the actual SQL definition. Sometimes you have to do code search instead, which is the other search button, depending on what you need. I find that to be the easiest way of navigating Spellbook, right? So let's say you have, you're working with a curated table, or you're trying to create a table. And so let's say you're working with a table and you find some sort of issue, or like the table doesn't really solve the problem you want it to solve. You can always come to our issues tab and create a new issue saying, hey, I noticed this, or hey, I want to see this kind of table. And this is a great way to kind of help us build better tables, fix bugs, add new tables as well. If you're just curious on what happens on Spellbook, you can go to discussions as well. We have a weekly GPT summary of all of the tables that have been added or modified by different authors. This can be a great way of kind of keeping up with like what's going on in Spellbook and like the deepest data layers of Dune. All right, well, now let's cover the fun part, how to set up Spellbook locally and how to contribute your own tables to Spellbook, either fixing someone else's table or adding a completely new one. You can go to the README, and it's got a lot more details on like how to navigate subprojects, submitting a PR, learning DBT. There's quite a few different walkthroughs as well. Doesn't hurt to have another one. So I am going to do a walkthrough that's actually fixing a bug I noticed in Spellbook tables over the weekend. So I was taking a look at this dashboard here, which is looking at roll-up economics, which is basically, you don't have to really know what this means. It's just basically revenues and costs for different roll-ups. And I noticed that this chart, for some reason, had no revenue, but it had cost, right? So I look here, and I'm able to tell that this is a Spellbook table because it doesn't follow any of the other patterns for raw tables or decoded tables or uploads or map views or query views. So I actually took this and I went to Spellbook and I just searched it up. And I had a hypothesis here where, I went to the sources. I want to go to DBT subprojects. So this was there's the L1 data fees, which I know is fine because I see costs, but I know that there must be a revenue table. And I see Mantle is in this revenue table, and it's using source gas fees. So I know gas fees is another table in Dune. So if I go to DBT subprojects, I look here. A lot of these DBT models follow the format of like, there is some logic that's consistent across blockchains or protocols. And essentially what we're doing here is we're just like looping through all of these different chains and then unioning them, union all across them. So I'm able to see, Mantle actually isn't included in here. So the reason why the revenues here are 0 is because Mantle is in the L2 revenue model, but the L2 revenue model depends on the gas fee model that doesn't have Mantle included. So that means that I need to go and add a gas Mantle fees table and then add it into this gas fees overall SQL table, right? So I already created a bug for this over the weekend. Jeff is our our leader in Spellbook and you'll be interacting with him and learning from him if you work on this stuff. So I'll just tell him I'm working on a quick PR for this now. And yeah, you'll see I already have these open on another page. Let me actually reopen this just so I have it as a reference. All right, so how am I going to contribute? So I'm going to first fork this repo. I already have a fork of my own. So if I go to my repositories, I already have a Spellbook fork. And yes, that's an old photo of me. So I already have a fork of it. And essentially what I did was I went ahead and cloned the repo with GitHub Desktop, and I'm doing it to contribute to the parent project. I'm going to open a new branch. I'm going to call it mantle gas fix. I'm going to create that branch, publish it to GitHub. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to open it in Visual Studio Code. And I know that what I want is, let's see, it's DBT sub-projects, roll up Ethereum, L2 revenue. I know that one's fine. I want gas fees. So it's under daily spellbook, models, sector, gas fees. Yeah, I know that's a lot. You get used to it. Models, sector, gas, not prices, fees. Okay, so what do I want to do? It's pretty simple in terms of I can see that we're pulling from probably the same type of model underlying it, right? So it's probably, I can just look, for example, at gas Zora. There's a schema file, the YAML. A YAML is kind of like a JSON where it just defines like who created the model, some tests, what columns are included, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm pretty sure that mantle is an OP stack, right? Mantle OP stack, what? Yeah, it's optimistic. Oh, it isn't using the modular OP stack. Okay, we'll worry about that later. For now, let's focus on getting us started. So I'm actually just going to create a copy of this. I'm going to rename it to mantle. I'm going to rename. So there's the SQL logic. No, I do not want to delete you. I want to rename you. So we have the SQL logic, and then we have the actual name of the schema file, and sometimes you'll also have a sources file, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. So I'm going to close those. I'm going to open these two. So you'll see here, first we want to just replace Zora with mantle and all of these. And yes, sometimes it is this easy to just create a model. A lot of the times you're doing this from scratch and you have to figure out the metadata yourself. So, yeah. I'm not going to take off these contributors because I know Spellbook originally did it. All right, so I'm just going to add my name in there. None of these other columns are going to change, so that's fine. So the schema is gas mantle. The table is fees, right? So this becomes gas mantle.fees. Partition by, you don't have to really worry about it unless it's a really big table. Almost always just choose a date, like block day, block month, block week. We're going to do incremental, which means that it's only going to update on a subset of blocks each time, so that way you're not rerunning the whole table. Don't worry about these other things, and yeah, unique key, this is just to make sure we don't end up with duplicates as it's being created. So I'm also just going to do Zora replace with mantle here. Let me just check a few things. Yeah, we're going to talk about this. So something key to note here is there's source. So source is querying basically a table within Dune or a table that's part of a different sub-project here. Ref is something you use for if the spell or table is within the same sub-project, right? So for example here, these gas models uses a ref because it's within the same sub-project. Again, that takes some getting used to, but if I just search up like ethereum.transactions, I should be able to find the sources table. Yeah, so Ethereum-based sources. So there's always a sources YAML file that defines the exact source tables we want to pull from. Is there a mantle one? So yeah, there's mantle already. Yeah, okay, so mantle transactions is already here. What about blocks? Mantle traces decoded, logs decoded, blocks. Yeah, okay. So in this case, I don't actually have to add any tables, but if you were working with like a decoded project, then you might have to add tables as well. I'm not going to change anything other here in the logic. The only thing I'm going to call out is you're going to see these incremental predicates. And this just basically means like once the model's been built once, it's going to update by pulling only the last like 7 days of prices and transactions and blocks. And so it can literally just add on to an existing table. That's all incremental is. Again, looks confusing. It's like really just like oh, I'm going to add this on at the end. There's nothing fancy about it. And again, with the schema, I didn't change anything about the names or the tests. So with this, I'm going to commit. Oh, wait. There's one thing I wanted to do. Once I create that, I have to go into here, the gas fees model, and add gas mantle fees, right? So that way it flows in. So I can do add models. Right. So now I've pushed this to GitHub, and I'm going to go back to the main Spellbook repo, right? So not the one I forked. I'm going to go back to the main Spellbook repo and do add gas mantle models. You should read through here. There's a bunch of helpful details on like what to do. I'm just going to remove this and say fixing mantle missing gas related to L2 revenues. I'm going to just link this issue. All right, so once I create this, it's going to run a CI, right? What does this mean? This is going to check like what new models have been edited or created, and it's going to run just those edited and created models. So I'm going to give it a few minutes to run, and once it's done, I'll go through the results with you guys. All right, so I've finished my snacks, and the model has finished running. Only took one commit. I promise that it's usually you'll have a few errors, syntax errors or whatnot that you'll have to check. Small tip, you can install Python locally and you can do a dbt compile. You can actually do a dbt compile with selecting a specific table to get the SQL from the Jinja, so you can run it in app. But I'm lucky I don't have to debug because I just copied someone else's model. If it's your first time contributing a model, you'll have to kind of sign an agreement. But otherwise, you'll see that this CI ran, and there's a bunch of different steps here. The only ones you have to pay attention to are down here. There's running initial models, and then there's testing it. You'll probably have to check both of these. This is where you'll normally run into errors. And you can see that we actually built up some test schema models. So the gas fees, well, first of all, the mantle new table we created ran in 1 minute. And then also because we added it to gas fees, that also ran. Sometimes if your PR is like you've been trying it for a few days or so, you might see a bunch of other tables in here, and that's because there's been other PRs made to Spellbook. And so it's trying to reconcile all of those changes. So you might have to go to your PR and update your branch from main, right? So in this case, I can take this, I can go to Dune, I can create a new query, and I can actually select from this table. All right, so this is a great way to be able to debug, oh, are my table outputs what I expect? Are there any values that are really high or really low that are weird? And also if, for example, the test failed, there would be a select statement here of like, hey, your test for unique values failed, run this table to see which values failed. So this is absolutely crucial to debugging. It's highly likely you run into errors. It's just part of the building ETL process. All right, so after this is done, I can go and add a label to it, ready for review. And then I can go and assign, you do not want to assign yourself. You also won't be able to because you're not admin. I go and assign Jeff and wait for him to kind of add his comments. And normally, give or take, within a day or two, you can then get it approved and merged. And then it'll all show through on all of the charts using these tables. So hopefully by the time you see this video, if you went to this query, you'll now see revenue data here. And we have now contributed, noticing a bug by looking into the lineage. We've added a new model and also edited an old model, gone through the CI and PR, And that is the full flow of contributing to Spellbook. So with all that, you are now a master at Spellbook. Go and have fun. The more you explore these models and contribute to them, I can tell you, you become like the top 0.01% of data experts in the space very quickly if you're deep in Spellbook. It's kind of like the iceberg of like the Dune dashboards and queries are like the tip of the iceberg. Spellbook is really that 90% in depth of the actual hard work of, you know, digging into the data and data engineering. So good luck. I'm always around. You can always DM me if you have questions, or just ask your questions directly in the issues section of Spellbook. And yeah, I'll see you around.